So what if I tell you that we can make AI more smarter than what it is today? If you have seen that whenever you are calling any of the LLM models and when you ask about the current data, that is the data which is happening as of now, then they might not be able to answer that data because the models are trained with a sets of data and those are historical data. So suppose if I take the example of a chat GPT model, that is the GPT-4o, then that model has been trained till 2023. But what if I ask that, okay, what is the weather today, or what is the stock price of maybe XYZ company today? Then they won't be able to answer that question. So what we need to do in that case is we need to instruct AI that, okay, don't worry if you do not have the information. These are the functions, behaviors where you can fetch the data. So all the different models, all the different LLMs has the way to take the function as the input and invoke those functions based on the prompt that we ask. So suppose if I take the example that, okay, tell me the weather of Bengaluru, that information, that LLM model, whatever I am using, might not have that information. So what I can do is I can give a set of function which takes or which identifies what is the weather of Bengaluru today, gives that input to the LLM model, and LLM model gives me the data. Okay, that's how we can make this LLM model smarter. So if you see my screen, this is the Spring AI that we are talking about. All the different models have this feature, and Spring AI gives us the platform, gives us the functionality which we can use it to interact with all the LLM functions that we can use. So we'll just take the example of the OpenAI functions here. So what it happens is, if you see, whatever we have, we give the chat prompt here, right? That, okay, I need the weather of Bengaluru. Let's take the example. So when we give this prompt, that particular prompt is been invoked via the API model, AI model, sorry. So in AI model, that particular prompt will be passed. AI model does not know about that information. So what we also do is, AI model will identify that, okay, do I have any function which can get me this data? Do I have any function which gets me the weather of Bengaluru or weather of any city or any place? It will check that in its function registry. So if it finds any function in its registry that gives us such kind of information, then it will invoke that function, pass on the information which it has, and then it will execute that function, get the response back, and it will tweak the response and send the response back to the client. So you can see that this is the exact pictorial representation of it, where you are just passing the prompt, it's going to the AI model, and AI model is taking the data from the function registry. And from the function registry, it's again going to the AI model, calculating its stuff and giving the response back. So this is what we are going to implement today in this video, and see how we can create the registry of functions, and how any LLM models can use those functions, and how we can pass those functions to LLM model to get me the desired outputs. So for that, what we will do is we have to create our Spring AI application. So for that, let me just go to the Spring initializer and let's create the application. So here I'm just doing these standard things here, that I'm creating the Java project and I'm building with the Maven, and I'm using Spring 3.3.3, and I'm using the project metadata group as daily code buffer, artifact as Spring AI function, name as Spring AI function, and let me just do AI here. Okay, that package name is AI, packaging is jar, and Java version is 21. So these are the basic information that I have. And what I'm doing is I'm adding two dependencies. One is Spring Web dependency, as I'm going to create a Spring Web application, and I have added a OpenAI dependency as well to interact with the OpenAI models. So these are the two dependencies that I have added to create my Spring AI application, which is a API, and that API can interact with the OpenAI models as well. So with that being said, let's generate this project and open in IntelliJ IDEA.
A few moments later.
So this is our application which we have opened, that is a Spring AI function, and these are all the package information, that these are all the files and resources. Okay, now how we can implement the Spring AI functions. Before we implement anything, what we will do is we'll create a basic controller which will talk to the LLM model. So let's first do that. What I will do is I'll create a new class within the controller package, and I'll say function controller. So this is just the simple thing that we are doing. Let me just rename it function controller. Okay, so this is a simple controller that we are making, and we are just calling the OpenAI models and we are just going to pass the prompt and that should return me the data. That's a simple thing that we are doing here. We have done this in the previous videos as well. So what we'll do is we will just make it as a REST controller. Okay, and here we are going to create a method that is the public string prompts, and then this is the method. Let me just return null for now, and this is going to take a request param, and that request param is message, and this is going to be my string message, and value equals to message, and I'm gonna give default value as well. So default value is what is the weather in Bengaluru. So this is the default prompt that I have, and I'm passing that information is a message. And what I need is here, I'm gonna need the chat model. So let me just get the chat model. So chat model is part of Spring Framework AI chat model, and this chat model we are gonna use to query the data. So I'm gonna auto wire this, and what we need the user message. So let's create a user message equals to new user message, and we are going to pass the message what we received as a message, and then we are going to do chat response equals to chat model dot call and new prompt. Within the new prompt I'm going to pass list dot of messages. So this is the response, and what we'll do is we'll just take the response dot get result dot get output dot get content, and this is what we are going to return. Okay, so you can see that this is the simple method. Let me just annotate with get mapping here. Okay, so you can see it's a simple thing. We have a prompt method. Let me just do prompt. So this is a simple prompt method with a get mapping, and I'm passing a message that what is the weather in Bengaluru, and that is the data that we are passing in message, and we are using the chat model to call this prompt here. So this is the prompt. Okay, there are two types of prompt. One is a system prompt and a user prompt. System prompt is what you give how that particular system should behave, how your LLM should behave. This is a user message that whatever the question that I'm asking, I want the answer for that. So that's why we are passing as a user message. We are getting the chat response back from where? From the chat model. So we are calling chat model.call method, and we are creating a prompt, and in that prompt we are passing the messages. So we can pass the list of messages. We are just passing the one message for now, and from that response we are getting the content back. That's a simple thing. Now what we have to do is, alongside that, we are going to connect to the OpenAI model. So we need to have the API key as well. As I've shown you in the previous videos as well, you need to log into the OpenAI account and you need to get your API key. I have my API key, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to add that API key in my properties file. So these are the two configurations that I'm going to add. That is the spring.ai.openai.api key. So that API key, whatever I have, and the model that I'm going to use. So I'm going to use this GPT-4o mini model. You can use any model of your choice. I'm going to use this, and I am going with this key. So I'm going to add this key in my environment variable. So what I will do, I'll just start my application. It should fail because I have not added the API key. I will go to the configuration and I will add the key in my environment variable. Okay, so I have added the API key as well in my environment variable, and this is a simple project that we have created, a simple controller. So let me just start my application, and you can see that the application is started. So what I will do is I'll go to the browser and I will go to the localhost 8080, and you can see that what I'm getting is I'm unable to provide the real-time weather updates. For the current weather in Bengaluru, I recommend checking a reliable weather website or app for the most accurate and up-to-date information. So that up-to-date accurate information is not available in the LLM model. So what it demands is, it demands a function that we can invoke when such kind of things happen. Okay, so we are making this AI model even smarter. So there are different ways to do it. If we go to the documentation as well, so this is the Spring AI function documentation, how we can call the functions. All the different LLM models of different organizations, you can see that there are different things available, right? So for functions, you can call for Mistral AI, Minimax, Moonshot AI, OpenAI, Olama, whatever it is. Okay, so these are all the different things available. For all those, we can call the functions. So let's take the example of OpenAI itself, and with that OpenAI itself, we can see how the functions are being added. So how we add the functions will differ based on model to model, but with Spring AI function layer, it has been standardized, so we just have the one implementation and internally it will identify how to implement based on the dependencies that we have added. So you can see that how it works. You can just go through this documentation. It's really easy and intuitive to learn. What we need to do is we need to create a Java function. Okay, so here you can see that given the example of a weather application. So let's use the same example so you can follow this document when you are going with this example as well. So here you can see that it's a simple class created, simple function. You can see that it is implementing a function which takes the request and response. Okay, this is the request that is taking and it's the response which is passing back. So what's the request? You can see that it is creating a record here. You can create a class simple Pojo as well, but as we are using Java 21, we can create a record. I have made a dedicated video on how to use record in Java 21. You can watch it here as well after this video. So what it is done is we have created a record which has two parameters, a location and a unit, which is Celsius or Fahrenheit. And in response, it is having two attributes, which is a temperature and the unit of temperature. Okay, so these are the two things that has been added as a request and response. And we need to implement a apply function which takes a request. So you can see that this is how simple function works in Java, and we are just implementing that function. So let's implement this function and see how we can call this function as well. So let me just create a simple function here. So I'll go to my application and let me just create a Java class and say weather service. Okay, and this is going to implement function, and you can see that this function is a Java util function. Okay, so once this is done, what I will do is I'll just copy this information. Okay, because this is the same thing that I'm gonna implement. This is nothing fancy. This is just a request and response classes that we created. You can directly create a Pojo as well, and you can directly create a record as well. Whatever is feasible you can do. Okay, so we just created a request and response, and here within a function we can pass what is my request. So I can say this is my request and response. Okay, so weather service.request is my request and weather service.response is my response. So this is the request response that we are taking, and now we need to implement a method, that is the apply method. Okay, so it is taking request and it is returning response. So in return it is going to do return new response, which is taking suppose 30 degrees Celsius as the input and unit.c as a degree Celsius. Okay, so you can see that whenever I'm going to use this weather service, it's going to return me 30 degrees. It's a simple thing. Okay, so this function has been created. Now I need to register this function with Spring, and then I need to register that function with OpenAI as well. Two things. So let's register this function in Spring first. So for that, what I'll do is I'll create a configuration class. So let me just create a config class and let me just annotate with configuration. So now if I go here, you can see that this is what the function that has been created, and you can see that there are different ways to register a function. Okay, you can register a function as a bean. So you can see that this is the first thing. This is what we created a class, and this is how you can create a function bean. So let's do this. So what we can do is public, and I can define function, okay, which takes weather service dot request as a request, weather service dot response as a response, and it's called get weather, and this returns weather service. Okay, and then this is going to be your bean. So here you can see that we just did a simple thing. Okay, this is nothing fancy. I have created a method that is gonna return the function which has the type of request and response. The name of this function is get weather, and it is going to return this function, that is the weather service that we created here. Okay, and this weather service has the apply function which takes the request and returns the response. Okay, you can see it's nothing fancy yet. Okay, now if I go back to config class, what I will do is I will describe this method as well with description, and I'm gonna pass the same information, get the weather in location. So this thing is very important. So these two things are very important. One is the description and one is the name of the method or name of the function. So the name of the function is get weather and the description is get the weather in location. So this information is crucial for your OpenAI model to understand what this function does. Okay, so that's why give information such a way that your LLM will be able to understand what this function does, and accordingly OpenAI model will call this function based on the description and based on its intelligence. So my bean is created. So now whatever the function that I have created is been registered with the Spring. Now I need to register with my OpenAI as well. So what I'll do is I will go to Spring AI function. Sorry, wrong class. I need to go to function controller, and here is something that I'm calling the OpenAI. So this call method is taking the prompt, and this prompt is what we are sending the message that what is the weather in Bangalore. Now here what I can do is at this point I can inject a function as well. Okay, that okay, if you're not able to find anything, these are the functions that I have. So if you want to use it, you can use it. That's what we are telling to model. So here I can pass after the prompt, I can pass OpenAI chat options, OpenAI chat options dot builder dot build dot with function, and here I'm going to pass the function name. So the name of the function is get weather. That's it. Okay, so you can see that what we did is whenever I'm calling my chat GPT with this prompt, I also injected an chat options that okay, I do have a function as well. So if you have multiple, you just give the list of multiple functions here. Okay, that's it. Now if I rerun my application, now what it has is it already has a function that gets me the weather. So now if I go back and if I rerun the same prompt again, that what is the weather in Bangalore, it should give me 30 degrees. You can see that the current temperature in Bangalore is 30 degrees. Now if I say no problem, what is the weather in New York, that should give me 30 degrees as well, because I have by default given that okay, what is the weather, it is 30 degrees. That's it, right? So if I come here, it will identify okay, what is the get weather, and it will go to this configuration. Get weather is this function which is returning weather service, and from your weather service, what is the request, it takes the name of the location. So as I have already defined what is the weather in Bangalore, chat AI option can identify that okay, Bangalore is the location, so Bangalore needs to be passed here, and unit is Celsius. Okay, so that's why we are getting, or we are receiving the data that we are getting in 30 degrees Celsius. So now how it works. So if we go down here, okay, so these are the different ways we can implement it. We just implemented in one of the ways, but you can see there is a documentation where we can inject this service in a different ways possible. And if you see, this is the entire diagram how it behaves. So this is the entire prompt that we created. So what we had in a prompt was we had a message. Okay, so what was the message? So if we go back here in our controller, this was the message, right? Prompt. Within this prompt, this was the message that we passed, that what is the weather in Bangalore. Alongside that, we also added a chat AI options which points to the function. You can see this points to a function where what is the name of the function, what is the description, and what it does. Okay, schema and all those information. So we tied that information. You can see this is what we tied to it. So now if you can refer to it within our prompt, we had an instruction and we had the reference to the function. Okay, now here you can see that we can call to a third party weather API service. Currently we had just not call it, but we will do it. We have just directly given that it's a 30 degrees Celsius, but we'll go and implement that as well. So now you can see that we did the request here to the OpenAI chat model. Okay, now with this request, it retrieved the definition of the function as well with 1.1, and with that definition it got that okay, what is the name, what is the description, and what is the signature of the function that we have defined. Okay, and then from the chat model we pass the user message, okay, that what is the weather in Bangalore. Chat model doesn't know that information. So with the assistant information, okay, what it tries to do is okay, I do not have any information, but I do have a function available to get me that information. So it will call that function, it will get that information. You can see that it is calling that function and getting that information, and that information it is passing to chat model that okay, now I have that information about the weather in Bangalore. Now generate a response with this information and give me the data back. Once we are getting that data back, we are generating or we are producing the response and giving back to the client. So this is how the entire flow works when we are adding a function in our API calls. Now what we will do is we have just implemented the default value here, right? That whatever it is, it gives me 30 degrees temperature. Now let's implement the third party weather API call as well. So we'll get to know that okay, if there is a third party API call involved and multiple functions involved, how it behaves. What I have done is I have logged into Rapid API, which gives the bunch of APIs to work with. Okay, and this is what I have came up with. This is the open weather that I'm gonna use. So this open weathers give me one API which takes the city name, and based on city name it will give me the temperature. Okay, so here you can see that it gives me the data in different languages. It takes the city, and this is the curl command. You can see that this is the URL that I'm going to pass, and here you can see that this is where we need to pass the city name. Okay, so this is your path variable, and then you can see that there are two header information. One we need to pass the host information, and one we need to pass the key information. So once you create your account, once you log in, you will get your key as well. So I have logged into my account and I have already got the key, so that key I'm going to use, but you can log in and you can get the key as well for you. And if you go to the sample responses, this is the sample response that you get. So you get the entire body, and within the body you get the weather as the data, and that is the list of weather, and within that you get the weather information, that how the weather it is, okay, how clear sky, whatever it is. And within the main section you can see that you get the temperature. Okay, so this is what you get. So we will use the same thing in our application. So let's go ahead and implement this entire API. So what all things we need? So let me just go here. We need two parameters. One is the host information, one is the key information, and one is the URL. Three things I need. So let me just add these three properties in my properties file. So let me just go to the IntelliJ IDEA, and let me just go to application.properties, and let me add those three properties. So you can see that I have added these three properties, that is XRapid API key, XRapid API host, XRapid API URL. These are the names that you can use any names. Okay, this is just a key and value pair. And here you can see that within the URL I have taken up till city. Okay, so if we go back here, you can see till city I have taken up. After that, this two information I will pass as a path variable. Okay, and then this particular host information that I have taken, and key also I have taken. So key information you can see that I have added as a environment variable. So I'm going to pass this key as an environment variable, just like what I have passed from the OpenAI key. Okay, so let me just add this key in my environment variable. I have added this key in the environment variable. Now I need to refer these properties in my Java. So I need to create the Pojo for it, and I need to inject these properties. So what I will do is I will just define Java class, and I say weather config properties. Okay, and I'm going to create a record. Okay, and I'm going to tell this is the config properties, configuration properties, and the name of the property should start with this. Okay, and what are the fields? So I need to say it's a key, so string key, string host, and string URL. Okay, so this is my configuration properties added. Now I need to enable this as well. So I will go to my main class, and I'm going to enable configuration properties. Okay, so now my configuration properties are added. So now what I have to do is I have to go to my weather service. So rather than now passing this 30 as a default value, I can call this third party API to get me the data. Okay, so I will just comment this out, and now my request and response will change. Okay, so if I go back, okay, what is my request? My request is just the city information, and my response is this. So accordingly I need to create my request and response values as well. Okay, so what I'll do is in my request I don't need unit, so I'll just remove this, and I'm going to remove this as well. So I need string location as input, but in response I don't need double or temp. What I need I can get the entire main thing here. So let me just create that. Okay, so I'm going to create public record main. Okay, and what are the fields? Fields are temp, so I can say I need double temp. I have fields like double, fields like double temp min, double temp max, and whatever the information that you want you can take. Okay, but okay, for this information it should be fine. If you want wind, cloud, whatever it is, you can take. Let's take this weather information as well. So what we are going to do is we can say public record weather, and we can take string description, right? It's a string value. So these two things that we have taken. Now in the response I want to take only these two. So I can say in my response I want to take main, and I want to take list of weather, because you can see that it's a list of weather, right? So I'm going to take list of weather. So here you can see that this is my response created, and it's going to give me request as a city, which is a location, and in response I'm going to send the main and the list of weather information. Now I need to call the API here. So what information I need? I need two things. I need the config weather config properties as well, and I need a REST client. Okay, so let me just add that information. Private final REST client and private final weather config properties. Okay, so let me add a constructor with only, okay, and what I will do is for REST client equals to REST client dot builder dot build dot, so I think the method is create. Yep, so I need to give the base URL, so that is weather config properties dot URL. So you can see that I have now my URL added, that is my REST client added, and the weather config properties also added. Okay, so now we have one problem. So let's go and fix it, because here whatever we have injected, right, it's not there. So what I can do is I can define private weather config properties, and let me just make it final, and I will inject in a constructor injector, and I have this properties added. Okay, so my bean will be created with weather config properties. Now I need to call the actual API in the apply method. So let's do that. So at the end what I need a response back, right? So with REST client dot get dot URI, and here we need to add the URI. So my URI is /city, and then I'm going to pass en, because if I go here you can see that that's the URL, right? If I go to code snippet, this is what I've added as a base URI, then this is what I am passing as a path variable, and English is what I need the language. Okay, so that's what I'm trying to do here, that this city I'm going to pass and English is default, and the value I'm going to pass here is weather config properties dot, sorry, it should be request dot location. Okay, then retrieve dot body, and this body is of type response dot class, and then return response. Okay, so here you can see that we are passing the response back. Now one more thing we need to do is we need to pass this headers. Two headers we have, right? So those two header information also we need to pass. So let's add those headers as well. So we need to pass multi-value map. Okay, and this multi-value map is of string map equals to new linked multi-value map. Okay, now here we need to pass map dot add and the value should be weather config properties dot host, and it should be key. Okay, these two properties. Now let me just grab these two values. So I'll go here, and one is this host, so let's copy this and give here host, and one is key, so I'll just copy this and give here. Okay, now this map I need to add here, so I need to put headers headers equals to headers dot add all, and I'm gonna pass map. Okay, so here you can see that I have passed the headers, I have passed the location name, whatever it is in English, and I'm going to retrieve this information, and it's going to convert in response class. What is the response class? It's going to give me main and the list of weather. So if I go back here, it's going to give me list of weather. So this information, so this entire weather block and the main block. Within main block, I'm going to get temp feels like minimum and maximum temperature. So that's all the information that I've added, nothing extra, and this particular function is already been added to my API called get weather. So it's gonna not give me 30 degrees now, it's going to give me the actual weather available. So let's restart my application and let's see. So something is wrong. You can see that weather config properties is not in your configuration. That's great. So let's try to fix this. Weather config properties could not be found. So I need to go to config, and the config is already added. Parameter 0 of constructor in config required a bean of type weather config properties that could not be found. Okay, so in config class, if I go to config class, the parameter 0 is weather config. This is not defined, that's what it's trying to say. So I can do one thing, that is import, and I can say I need weather configuration properties.class. So it should be loaded before that, and still it is not working. Consider defining a bean of type string. So parameter 0 of constructor in weather config properties required a bean of type string which could not be defined. Okay, so if I go to weather config properties, so key host and URL, I can see it's correctly defined, so there should not be any issue. Okay, so I got the issue. So let me just do one thing. I should not be importing this. What I need to do is, let me just optimize the import. So this weather config properties, whatever I've added, that has to be, I added the enable config properties here, but I need to add that class so it is loaded. So it should be weather config properties.class. So now it should load the configuration for us. So let's just start my application again. That should start now. Yes, you can see that was just a simple issue that I didn't pass this configuration. So now it is started. If I go to my controller and if I hit this API, it should not give me 30 degrees. It should give me the exact temperature now. And yep, you can see that we are getting the data. And here you can see that the current weather in New York is as follows. Temperature 63, feels like 63, minimum temperature, maximum temperature, condition overcast clouds. Okay, so let's see the same for Bengaluru, and you should be getting, you can see that the current weather in Bengaluru is 79 with overcast clouds, feels like 79 with a minimum of this and maximum of this. So you can see that these are all the information that we took from here, and accordingly we are getting the data. Okay, so that's how you can see that we can implement a function which ChatGPT does not understand, or any of the LLM model does not understand, and we are giving the ways for it to understand some of the data, and it can get us the data for us. So it is a simple example where we have added for the weather service. We can add for, suppose if you're building the order management system, then you can create a function about what is the status of the order. If you're building the weather application, this is how we can get the weather, right? And much more. So there are much more use cases of adding the function which LLM does not know the data, but we can add the functions and we can get the data. this you can see that ties all together. We can add the RAG models, we can add the functions, and with all of these things, LLM will get a lot more context. It will get a lot more ways to get the information which it does not have. And these are the ways that we can train the models and get more from the existing models itself. Okay, so just go through this example. This is just one of the ways that we can get the data. I would like to know each one of you from how you can utilize this Spring AI functions and how we can utilize this in your application. If you have such ideas, do let me know in the comment section below. We can discuss and we can build something out of it as well. As always, I will add the link in the description below for this project. You can refer to it and you can create your own applications. If you have any doubts regarding any of the things that we have covered, do let me know in the comment section as well. If you have enjoyed this video, give us a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel for the upcoming videos. I will see you in the next video. Till then, happy coding. Bye bye.